Kenny and Renny Show is brought to you by Johnston Group, Vittorio Rossi, Trans-Canada Brewing, Lou Ferlin, Cambrian Credit Union, and Homefield.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined from Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-round one of the NHL Draft show. Kenny's going to join us right away. We're going to have Jason Buchel on to break everything down here. Of course, we're going to dive into the Jets pick, Colby Barlow, someone that the Jets are absolutely elated to have drafted. Sitting here in the media workroom amongst, the creme de la creme. If you take a look over here, we've got the WST boys. Look at them rocking it all day, all night. They got big J style. I got to tell you this. These guys, if you want to go watch the reaction that Kevin Cheveldayoff has to the first round of the draft, there's only one place you can get it. It's an exclusive, and that's on YouTube at the WST site, because they were the only ones there. They figured it out, so good for them. Excellent job by WST. Love working with these guys down here. We're going to get into it all here. I got to say, I'm a little bit grumpy. My mouth hurts. Too many people didn't hear the story about me missing the tooth, and too many people think the cut on the lip is like herpes simplex 1 or something like that. So a little bit grumpy, but I can get through it. I probably shouldn't have had that handful of salty popcorn, because now I'm feeling a little bit salty right now. I'm going to get over it. We got to move on from that. Best way to do that is to bring in our guests. But before we get to Jay Buchel, who we're just so excited to have on, we're going to get Ken in on the show here. You know the man. You know he's got the best music in the business. Why not play that music and bring it in? Here comes my main man, Ken Wiebe. Kenny, my main man, always out there doing great work. You got some stuff posted up on Sportsnet, ready to go for people who want to go out. Check it out. Ken's wrote it. It'll be up there right away. He's going to get a real good dive into this, a little bit of a sneak peek when he talked to Colby Barlow's general manager at the OHL level to get some great insight. I was down here talking to him afterwards, so we'll get a little bit of insight there. And we're going to get the guy who actually knows what he's talking about in Jay Buchel, who's going to come on and give us a look at this. Ken, just quickly before we bring in Jay, I just want you to give me your thoughts on the Jets pick before we expand, because there were some other, decent players taken in this draft that we may have to say something about here. But just give me a quick one for the Jets fans on Colby Barlow. I know that when the pick was coming up, you thought that they'd go with a skilled forward. That's exactly what they did. What was your take?
Yeah, no doubt. I thought they'd be going for a skilled centerman in specific, but the fact that Colby Barlow was there unexpectedly at 18, I think that changed their, positioning essentially. This would be Mark Hillier told reporters yesterday, Sean, that they were hoping to get someone that was maybe 9th or 10th or 11th on their list. And I can't imagine they had Barlow much lower than that. And I'm guessing that Kevin Cheveldayoff basically would have ran to the podium when he was available. There was some intrigue whether the Swedish defenseman was going to be picked by Detroit or not. But once they did select him, Pekka, they had basically had another guy land in their lap, much like Cole Perfetti and Chaz Lucius before him. But the biggest difference there is there's no injury concerns at all with Barlow. This is a guy that oozes character. He had 46 snipes last year as a 17-year-old captain, youngest captain in Owen Sound Attack franchise history. Yeah. And this is a guy that's not just a one-trick pony, as Jason is going to tell us shortly. I'll save Del DeGray's comments for after we have Jay on, but this is just an absolute slam dunk. I know people say this all the time. They get somebody who's way higher on their list. This is absolutely someone the Jets did not expect to be laying there available to them at 18. And this is a guy, Sean, very similar, in terms of body type, 6'1", 194, similar to Rutger McGroarty, goes to the hard areas, plays a 200-foot game and is, a little bit different. A lot of us maybe thought Oliver Moore would be the pick, given the Jets' propensity to go into the U.S. National Development Team program, and instead they go to the Ontario Hockey League, and they found themselves. Jason Bukala said it himself, and he'll say it again shortly. This is a guy who has the potential to be a future Winnipeg Jets captain, to go along with a potential foundational piece. I think this is an absolutely brilliant piece of business for the Winnipeg Jets and getting Colby Barlow at 18th overall.
Well, I'll tell you this, it's our job to provide insight. And how is this for insight? If, hey, Colby Barlow can play as mean as that beard that he's able to grow at 17 years old, the Jets got themselves a gem. You keep saying what Jason Bukala is going to say. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth.
You should.
Bring him into the show. Jay Bukala, thank you so much for joining us at this time. Hey, how are things going with you? You're in a great city, having a great time. What's the draft been like for you so far?
Well, it was a fascinating day, fellas. I mean, for as long as I've been in the game, I haven't gone through a first round without a trade happening, trade up, trade back. And I think it speaks to the value that teams put on their list building this year. The depth of this crop has to be factored in that equation. And, I've been in those positions where we've done those types of things on the floor, whether it be in the first round or later. And, the reality is you either have 3 or 4 or 5 guys after your pick that you're falling in love with, and you feel like somebody else wants that guy, whoever that might be, at your slot. I think this was a draft that was kind of all over the place with different values of different lists. But the one thing that is universally valued here, all these teams loved this draft class. And I was texting with my good friend Mark Hillier, and there's not a chance. I mean, I've known Hilly for too long, like long time. There's not a chance he's going to be able to look me in the eyes and tell me that, oh yeah, we knew he was going to be there at that pick. Not a chance. You guys I'm telling you this, I'm so excited for Winnipeg and the Winnipeg Jet fans. This is the kind of guy, especially with some of the noise I've heard coming out of Winnipeg in recent weeks, and, maybe transitioning out from a certain core group, if you will, potentially. Yeah. What a coup this is. I'm telling you, he's going to be the captain of the Winnipeg Jets someday. Your community is going to love him. Young people are going to love him. He's going to score goals. He's going to go through the wall for everybody in that community. I personally love Winnipeg. I know what they stand for in the province, and what a great day.
Wow. Ken?
Yeah, no, I mean, I spoke with Dale DeGray, but what stands out to you about his overall package, Jay?
So it starts with character and it trickles down from there. Let's start off the ice. Scholastic Player of the Year. So he manages his time very well. Okay, he trains, he keeps himself in shape. He's a solid citizen of the community, and he's an A student. That tells you right there he's an organized individual at a young age. He knows how to be prepared, right? Take it to the rink. Now you're the captain, a young captain at the OHL level in the room. Similar to Nate Danielson, these are young captains. You got 20-year-olds in there. You got some 21-year-olds who are overagers. That's a big job. Small communities like Owen Sound, even bigger job, because you can't go anywhere in those towns. Places like Moose Jaw, Swift, Sault Ste. Marie, Owen Sound, you can't go anywhere in those communities without people knowing who you are, right, with your hockey team. And then let's just get right to the brass tacks. Heavy player, elite release, makes plays in traffic, comes off the half wall on both sides. Off the puck, when he moves it, he's going to go to the cage looking for garbage or a tip. I don't know, guys. He played through a hip flexor at the Worlds. I was concerned because I noticed it. I came back and I said to Sammy, I'm worried about his skating. Like, he looked like he fatigued. And what I meant by that was that he started to stand up more upright in his stride, which loses your length of your stride. You know what I mean? Because you're standing straight, you have no knee bend, so your stride gets shorter. I noticed that. But hey, get a hip flexor. Like, if I have a hip flexor at my age, I can't get out of bed in the morning. Never mind go play at the U18. Right? So that impeded him a little bit, but I don't know. Like, if I was running the Florida Panthers staff right now and that kid fell in my lap at 18, I'd be, well, you can tell I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited about that pick.
I want you touched on it a little bit here, and youngest captain in Owen Sound history, but give me an idea of what a young man has to be to wear a C as a 17-year-old on a team full of guys who, many of them are 3 years older than that player. What kind of guy do you have to be? How put together do you have to be at that age to be able to pull that off?
You're a conduit to everybody. So it could be to the trainer, could be to the general manager, Dale DeGray. I've known Digger for a long, long time too. Let me tell you, what a quality organization they run there too. I think, Kenny, you said you talked to Digger and you're going to bring him on here in a little bit. But he's the ultimate conduit between all these things. And when you're that age, now let's be honest, Barlow's 17 through 18, and he looks like he's 25 with that beard and whatever else. But that's a challenge. Listen, I think it's a special in today's day and age with technology, cell phones, computers, all the social media, all these pressures outside of just playing a sport. When you can hold your teammates accountable, be a conduit to your upper management, be comfortable enough in your own skin to go to the coach to say, hey, listen, this is what's going on in the room, or your trainer. Hey, whenever you need real good, firm information on a player, always go to the trainer. So he's going to the trainer to support the guys in the room. Don't discount it. Like, this is I'm not hyperboling this. Like, it's a big deal.
Dale DeGray said to me earlier, he said the story about him as a 16-year-old is that he was chasing 30 goals and everyone was trying to pass it to him, even though it was one of these situations where they were going out of their way to try to pass it rather than finish the game. He said he literally got up in the middle of the bench and he started telling his teammates, stop passing it to me. The 30 goals will come. We need to win the game. And he was just blown away by it. And he said he was joking, he said scouts are trying to call to get the dirt on him. And he said, well, good luck with that. And if you do get some, let me know. I mean, as a scout and as a guy in an organization, when you hear these types of stories when doing your background checks, what does that do in terms of how it can maybe help a guy who already was high on a board, what those intangibles can mean in your pursuit of putting together these lists?
It speaks to his character. It doesn't surprise me in the least. So in that game that you're talking about, Kenny, 15 shots on goal that night. He had 15 shots on goal. They won it in overtime off his stick. So
naturally,
if you believe in what goes around comes around and a little bit of karma, then even when he goes to the bench and says, "Quit feeding me every time you get it," he ends the game in overtime. So I don't know. I believe good things come to good people. I believe that good things come to young people who work really hard to attain their goals. This guy. Well, when he gets there, it's just going to be – he'll immediately take charge with your younger group of players. He's going to be really good for Lambert. He's going to be – when McGroarty gets there, him and McGroarty, there's going to be some synergy there with those two personalities. And I don't know, like I know what it's like coming from a smaller market in the league, okay? I know how important it is to have a really solid dressing room. I know how important it is to build character within your group and pull the rope in the same direction. These guys that they got coming through right now, good times.
So I can tell you're surprised that he dropped, but try and figure out, try and explain to us, give us your best theory on why he dropped.
Definitely had nothing to do with him. Again, it was just the value that different teams put on different players in the process. And, every list, I can say with 100% assurance, actually, that I think everybody built their list according to what they thought was the best player available. And that's just how it rolled out. Okay. But if you were to go ask half the league right now, if they thought Colby Barlow was going to get to the Winnipeg Jets, I guarantee half the league would say not a chance. Like, they thought for sure he would have been gone. Okay. So, nothing against the player at all. There's a couple of things that happen. Reinbacher going early, that creates a stir. Then like Arizona with Simashev and Boot, like that was way off the board for me, fellas, way off. Yeah. So, and I think I'm not trying to be that guy. I'm not trying to stir the pot, but I think universally we would all agree with that, right? That those two picks were way off the board. So what happens? Trickle down effect. Colby Barlow becomes a Winnipeg Jet.
Yeah, super interesting. In talking with Dale, he said, obviously like any other 17-year-old turning 18, he could get quicker, but he thought he got around the ice pretty well. Obviously, you don't see skating as a concern with him either, Jay?
I have no problems with his mechanics. He does get, when he does get tired, because heavier core guys, when they get tired, it's just their instinct to start to stand tall. Like, they're burning up a little bit differently. Your guys are going to get around that. He's going to get with your development team there, and they're going to work through that. His small area space guys, so he's a load. And when he comes off the wall and steps to the middle of the ice, his first 3 steps, he creates enough space right away. And then he's got body position, which is weight and strength. So I don't need him to necessarily transport it between the blue lines all the time. He's going to be capable of it, but that hard area, game that you need to have come, the back half of the season when playoffs are on the horizon, quickness to small areas. He'll be a load to defend early in his career.
So where does he need to improve, Jay?
I think that again, I keep coming back to it, and I don't want to bore your listeners, but
they love this stuff. This is why you're here.
Okay, so he needs to get more. So on average, an NHL shift is going to be between 38 and 42 seconds when the game becomes a track meet. Okay, so what I need is for him not to break down at 31, 32 seconds. That doesn't sound like much, but that 5 or 6 seconds between, let's say he's pressuring back. Okay, it's a zone exit offensively. He's pressuring back. He's starting to break down at 31 seconds. Now that 5-second gap there, we need to get more out of him for that 5 seconds to take that check all the way back to your net if that's required. Going on offense, it's different because of course you just can chip it and make a change, or you just can move off of that. So I don't know. It's that's the only area I really believe.
I was talking with Dale too about, he goes to team, played for Canada. He gets put into a defensive role, kills penalties. He's talking about blocking shots. I mean, would this be a guy who would be in the mix for Canada at the World Junior coming up, Jay? Do you think too in the fall? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And to his credit, he doesn't have to necessarily like this. It should be an elite group, right? He doesn't have to score at the World Junior camp or at the World Juniors. He's got to provide all the other detail. And I think that, come Gothenburg and Sweden on the bigger ice, which is let me preface that a lot of the Swedish rinks have gone to the hybrid. You guys have seen that. It's like it's not Olympic. It's like a hybrid. He'll be fine.
Touched on
sometimes. Go on, Ken.
So we mentioned Rutger McGroarty a few times now. Jay, you've had the benefit of watching him a few times, and we've talked about what you've seen, but curious if you'd be willing to share with your listeners what you've thought of his development over the course of the year and where he's at a year after getting picked in the first round by the Winnipeg Jets. And then we'll go to Brad Lambert after that.
Okay, so coming out of the summer season, I still had concerns. I think, Kenny, you and I went back and forth a little bit around Thanksgiving about this. So early in his college season, I had some concerns still, some step concerns. But the college season did him well. So his pace, especially on straight lines, has improved dramatically. If I had to put a percentage on it, I might go as high as 20%. Okay, so he's planed out. He's better prepared that way. They were a wagon at Michigan, like an offensive wagon, and he was a catalyst in that. More off the puck, which is really valuable than on the puck. When that guy, what he did really well, played to his identity down the stretch. When he finds a puck between the hash marks, middle of the ice, I mean, he's a load to defend. He's getting it on goal. He's producing offense.
Go to Lambert as well, Ken. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah. So Lambert, I wasn't sure how that was going to work out. I don't know how you guys felt like with the whole thing going to Seattle, which I thought would be good for him, first of all. But I was concerned between the ears where he was going to be at with this process. Like he comes over. There's a lot of hype around this player early. Like way early, double underage at the Holinka a couple years ago. Falls a little bit in the draft. Kind of a pedestrian start to his pro career. To his credit, he played to his identity right to the end of the marathon in Seattle. Played fast, scored, played to his offensive identity again. Got more confident with the puck. There's some holes there. I'm not gonna let him off the ledge quite yet. Okay, so there's some detail holes there. There's times he's got to move it and then go to space and get it back, not just carry it in himself all the time. But today, compared to call it Christmas time, I'm much more confident in Lambert's trajectory than I was at that time.
I've got thoughts on this, but I want to hear yours. They're far more informed. Do you think that the Rutger McGroarty, the Colby Barlow, what we're seeing from the Jets here compared to what we've seen from them in the past, kind of shows maybe a bit of a shift in philosophy of how Mark Hillier and the Jets are drafting?
It's interesting. I don't know that it's necessarily something that they're consciously aware of. I just believe that in the cycle that these are the best players available to them at that time. So, it's easy to pigeonhole certain teams. Like when Kyle Dubas was in Toronto, you could pretty much say he's going to draft this kind of player. You know what I mean? With Hilly and his staff, I just think they're looking for the best player. He's never going to say this, and neither Chevy, but I've been there and I know we want to also try and get people that are going to love our community and be part of where we want to go as an organization. Certain franchise in the league, economically, they need those types of players, guys. So if you're splitting hairs on player A, B, and C, and two of them don't give you the warm and fuzzies that they could be a Jet for a long period of time, you go to the other guy, and maybe that's just kind of how it's played out.
As someone who's been at those tables, I mean, we know it's maybe a little bit different because Barlow has been so high on their list that they're running to the podium to get him. But, in a normal situation, you have Oliver Moore there, you have Otto Stenberg, you have Ed Struzer-Reiser, and even Oliver Bonk. We know they were interested in Bonk as well. Sammy had him at 18 on his list. What are those conversations like where it's positional need versus best player available in that situation, especially in a first-round scenario?
It's always best player available. I mean, all things being equal, Ken, if you could get a center or a right shot D, if he is the best player on your list, you take those guys. I'm not gonna lie, but if after you've had all those conversations, it ends up being a winger, so be it. You just manage the asset one way or the other. There's going to be another day. There's a day tomorrow with a lot of great names on the lists, and you regroup and you keep moving forward.
How about a quick one too? I know you're not just an amateur guy. What are your thoughts on the trade for Dubois and what the Jets are getting? In their three players here with Gabe Vilardi, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari. Heard a lot of great things about all three players in the last few days. Curious for your thoughts on those three.
So let's start with the more veteran guy. Iafallo plays fast, competes. I think he's going to give you an honest effort each and every night. He's going to be reliable. So that when you come into the rink, he's going to give you everything he's got on that day. I call it bad days because we all know there's bad days in the National Hockey League. On your worst day, can you give us enough? That's what I always ask myself. And I believe that he can do that for Winnipeg. Vilardi's motivated. He's had some back issues in the past. He's very gifted offensively. He's a big body, but he's a bumper. He's not a banger. So don't expect a lot of physicality out of him, but he's got great mitts and he can make plays in the offensive zone. Kupari is very interesting. Understated offense. He's built like a fire hydrant, quick to space, good brain, can kill penalties. Another competitive guy, a Finn, a leader in years gone by with that group coming through Finland. So, and of course, the draft pick on top of all that, right? So that's when you're dealing from a position of weakness, I think they maximized.
No doubt. Hey, just because it's popped up here a couple of times, I want to get you. Sometimes I like this question. Sometimes I think players just are themselves and they don't necessarily have a comparable. But just because it's popping up in the chat room here, Colby Barlow, do you have a comparable for him in the league? Someone that you say he plays like?
Oh, it's been a long night, fellas. It's been a long night. Power forward. So let's think Anderson in Montreal. But this is going to surprise you guys, so just bear with me a little bit. Patrick Maroon has understated offense. So, he's how strong he is along the wall and stuff. Barlow's way better than Maroon, so don't get me wrong. But think about Maroon's body with Anderson's finish when he's playing really well, and then blend in some Tkachuk character in there as well.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a concoction. I know it's a lot to digest. I'll keep you up all night, but I'm trying to forecast it all over the place. There.
It's
like Frankenstein getting smashed together. Sounds like it could be a monster, which I'm sure Jets fans are going to like.
Just a quick one for me, Jay, before we let you get rolling here. So you got three players that could be wingers or centermen, two acquired in the trade. Who is the best candidate to play in the middle and why? Between Kevin Cheveldayoff said earlier today, sort of hinted at Perfetti maybe getting a chance there. Between Cole Perfetti, Gabe Vilardi, and Rasmus Kupari, who do you like best? And maybe could two of the three of those guys eventually play down the middle for the Winnipeg Jets? Maybe even, Kupari's kind of more of in the middle six, but could he? Someone told me they thought he could be a second line center. I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
I think he's a spot two. I don't think he's a regular two. Okay, so let's call him a 2.5 for argument's sake. Vilardi can play the middle, provided that he continues to work on his lower core and his strength, because he did have the back issue, and he's never been a burner, but he's you can't underestimate his movement. It's kind of like Carlson, who got drafted today. Like when you watch Fantilli, it's like his hair's on fire. Carlson's moving really quick too. Like he is. He just looks different. So if I had to forecast it, I think Velarde's a 2. I think Kupari's a 2.5. So let's call him a 3 when the Jets are good. I don't think either one of those guys are 1. I don't potentially. I'd have to see. I'll defer to Chevy. He knows his guy's best. I'm not in love with Perfetti in the middle as a 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, but I don't know if you have to go or not, but I'm going to ask kind of a wide-ranging question because people want to know about this draft. You talked about it. It's an interesting draft. You talked about the idea of Carlson going and then Fantilli. I was surprised by that. I was definitely surprised by the Canadians pick. So much to kind of handle. I'm just going to give you the open floor of what stood out to this draft, maybe winners or losers for you. But what are the things that after day one, Jay Bukala walks away from and says, wow, that's what stood out?
Well, Arizona for sure. I thought that they could have traded back if they were going to make those 2 picks. Having said that, they had a strategy in place, and they're so flush with prospects, and they only got room for so many of them. So, making the pick, I guess, makes sense too because they're only going to have room for so many of these guys. St. Louis Blues had a heck of a day. Like those 3 picks that they made. Dvorsky, Stenberg. So you talk about 2 guys from leadership groups of international teams. And then they went to Lindstein, right, with their last pick, I believe. And, so Dvorsky, Stenberg, oh, gosh, let me tell you, that's impressive stuff. The comparables there, Dvorsky, catch and release is exceptional. He's going to be a top 6 forward, has to be that guy that's involved offensively all the time. Stenberg, up and down the lineup, all over the place, battles, rips pucks from all over the ice. Like if you look up his heat map, I mean, it's all over the place. And then Lindstein, he's like a Dan Hamhuis comparable for me from back in the day. Pretty good day.
And how about, we should ask you about Connor Bedard. I mean, obviously he's the story of today, and not just because he loves Sean's suit, but, for the Blackhawks to get Bedard and Oliver Moore, maybe just a quick thought on where, because he's going to be playing in the Jets division in the Central. Curious for in terms of impact, and can he play center ice right away in the NHL, or would it be better suited for him to start on right wing and then shift over eventually?
No, you can't. Don't ruin a good thing. His spatial awareness, board to board, and the width of the ice is too elite. You don't want to take it away. You don't want him to start on one side and have to track all the way to the other side. Give him the puck in the middle. Let him use everything. Okay, so that's going to be the one thing for Bedard. Adding Moore there too. Again, down the middle of the ice. Moore's, he's a Swiss Army knife. He can play up and down the lineup. Arguably the quickest forward in the league. So the one thing, my one big takeaway from Connor Bedard outside of his ability is, wow, great character. I mean, humble, deflects attention. And you could tell by the end, though, Sean, I think you would agree, he just kind of wants the day to be over. He wants to get back just to play.
Yeah, I was interested in your thoughts on that because I think some people would take a look and think this is easy, right? When you're basically waiting for a coronation, and your name is going to be the first one that's picked.
Yeah.
I think some people think that that's easy, but I was wondering from your perspective, as a guy who watches for these kind of telltale signs, how you thought he handled the day, because I can tell you when he came over and talked to me by that point in the night, I was extremely impressed with how he handled the situation, right? He talked, there were some Regina guys there. He kibitzed with them. He made some jokes about how, he got along with everyone in Regina except for that specific reporter who was there. I felt like he was freeing himself. And I think one of the things we were watching for, now that you're in the media, you'll get this, but I used to look at him and think he's going to be kind of like Connor McDavid, right? Doesn't say a lot, doesn't really want to show that much. What you want is a guy who's getting towards Sidney Crosby, who's not flashy, but is really engaging and will talk with you. And tonight I felt like I saw signs of Connor Bedard heading to be more like a Sidney Crosby than like what we see from Connor McDavid.
100%. 100%. He's totally different than Connor McDavid. I was fortunate enough to be in the league already when Sid was coming through, and he reminds me a lot of that, like his demeanor, his professionalism. But he's got a little bit of a wiry side. He's got a little bit of you can see he's going to joke around with guys in the room too. The room loves that, right? You don't want to have uptight superstars. Like your room needs you to have fun with everybody. You spend a lot of time together, grow together in Chicago, get good together, enjoy the ride. And you know what, guys? Sorry that they're in the same division. They're going to get good too.
Last one before I let you go for day two. I know you said it was like around 1.5 almost. What are you looking for tomorrow on day two here?
The first goalie that goes off the board, there'll be a run of goalies. So Harabel, I'm anticipating will go first. I think Augustine will go second. But there's some great names still on the board early. So Crystal out of Kelowna comes to mind right away. Gavin Brindley from the University of Michigan, he comes to mind right away. I love Gavin Brindley. Undersized, but really competitive guy. Geez, like I don't have my list right in front of me right now, Kenny, but let's just say it was pretty flush when I left.
Right on.
Jay,
awesome
Jay,
stuff.
absolutely great job. And I can't believe that you carved out the time for us after the busy day that you had to hop on here. I don't deserve that. I know Ken no way in hell deserves it. So thank you so much for carving out the time. Great work.
Amazing.
Our audience is they're spoiled for it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Anytime, guys. I'm glad we could pull it off. So enjoy the rest of the process, and hopefully we circle back.
Talk soon.
You bet.
Jay. Thanks so much.
Enjoy
Have a
the
great
rest
night
of
here.
Nashville. Kenny, before we do get into it, I want to make sure that I have to say to the audience, we sprung this on everybody late. We didn't even know when we were going up. So the fact that we have everyone in here that we have makes me absolutely joyous with the audience that we have. Also, the fact that the last show that we did, a little bit of a pop-up after the trade, we had over 4,000 people tuning into that, and the number's still climbing on that. So that's great. And it made it so that, our friends and our sponsors have been jumping on board because of that. We do really appreciate that. While we're here, why don't we do it? I know that someone was throwing out the idea of throwing out the lamplighter going to Chevy. We had a great comment earlier on. Let's bring that up. Throw it up as Eric Horleyson says Chevy is the lamplighter for drafting Barlow. I think that's fair enough. Why don't we give away some of the frosty, delicious nectar of the gods in the Trans-Canada Lamplighter Amber Ale? Hey, you just throw out your lamplighter of this evening, who you thought you did best in the draft. And we're going to do it because we still have 8 packs of lamplighter to get away. You send that to me. You know how to do it. Send it to SN Sean Reynolds. And if you are picked, you will have your very own frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends from Trans-Canada Brewing Company. Absolutely great job that they do. Glad to see them back. And let's start going through the other people who are helping us out here. How about the Johnston Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs, who we called them up, said, would you be interested in sponsoring us down at the draft here? They jumped on board. As they always do. They've always got us. Ken, you want to give a shout out to Sweet Lou Ferlin, who hopped on board here?
Yes, sir. Of course, Sweet Lou Ferlin for all of your real estate needs. Excellent human being, excellent realtor, and excellent supporter of the community. From Royal LePage, you can reach him. Let's get the old thing up here. Let's pop her up. Do you got it?
Yeah, I can grab it there. You do your thing.
Yeah,
wow,
right
now
there.
Now let's just both hit it back and forth at the same time.
Not
Play a
quite
game
in
of pong.
mid-season form
no,
here.
not
you
quite.
You can reach Lou Ferlin at louferlin.ca. That's louferlin.ca. You could also reach him by email at lou@louferlin.ca. You could reach him by cell at 204-791-9971 or at the office 204-989-5000. Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty.
Love Sweet Lou is so good. There, we did it one more time. Okay. It was good to see him at the party there. Want to give a shout out to the boys at Home Field. It was glad to see Corey there. I know Corey from Home Field had a great time, and I know some people got some shovels on the way out the door there. That was absolutely good stuff, and we cannot do this without giving a shout out to our friends at Vittorio Rossi, who on this night, you mentioned it before we did the one-on-one, before I did a one-on-one with Connor Bedard, the first thing he said was, that's a great jacket. Well, hey, if you want to be the kind of guy who stops the number 1 overall pick, a player who's on his way to being a generational player, if you want to stop someone like that in their tracks, you know what you do? You go over, you talk to Frankie and the boys at Vittorio Rossi, and they will put the kind of clothes on you that do exactly that. Again, at the Kenny and Renny year-ender, it was great to catch up with them. And then I wanted to save the last for some of the people that we're so happy to have on board. Our summertime friends in the keg, who they don't need any introduction. With this one, this is like you're talking about things that sell themselves. Like if anyone's ever been to the keg, they've been back to the keg because it's absolutely phenomenal. Love that they've come on board here. Hoping to have them join us for the rest of the season after this. That would be a great place to go celebrate. Ken, you got the full-time job, and we never had that celebration.
I just sent you a note about the date. Yeah, I think
you
we're going
did
to go there. Yeah,
okay.
I just sent you a note for the date. We're going to try to go.
For your correspondence, you should get star it if it's something really important like that. And finally, I wanted to throw this one out there. Pristine Roofing, North End Rick. Is one of the guys who goes around and does this. I can tell you this. Pristine Roofing, Ken, came on board with Kenny and Renny because Kenny and Renny, I think they think, not you specifically, they think I may know how to make them money. And this is why all those people who don't know, in another life, Renny ran his own roofing company. And I think what Pristine has been doing is going around and for years fixing all of Renny's mistakes during the Renny roofing days. And they're like, let's follow this guy some more and see if he can bring some more money. So I've been putting their kids through college, and we'd like to continue doing that. If anyone has any work they want, siding, exterior work, of course, roofing, give Pristine Roofing a call and make sure you tell them Kenny and Renny sent you. If you're dealing with any of our fine, lovely sponsors, make sure you tell them that Kenny and Renny sent you. Ken, let's dig a little deeper into this. Let's talk about the conversation that what do you want to do here? Where you want to go?
You should go with Barlow. You had him one-on-one after his scrum. I listened to his scrum. I had the audio from that. But what stood out maybe in those answers that maybe folks said maybe didn't see necessarily right away, and if they hadn't seen it, they can see it at sportsnet.ca. But what stood out to you about the conversation, and maybe anything that stood out like pre or post interview from just your brief exchange with him?
Well, I think one of the things is, people are going to listen to a guy like Jay Bukala, which they should, who's going to be able to break down hockey and tell you exactly what it is that he brings to the table. We heard all that kind of stuff. I think the one thing that we can kind of see when we're interacting with these players is, his confidence level is high, right? Like there's a lot of times, hey, I always love this. You'll remember this. There was a time when Nick Ehlers came walking in, and Nick Ehlers was a guy who came in, and I remember looking at him and thinking, like, the guy looks like he's 145 pounds and he's going to go play in the NHL. And this is still back in the days when the NHL was a big, tough league, right? And he came walking in at, high pick as he was. And Fred Misalachuk, the TSN cameraman, who we both absolutely adore and love, what he would do is he would take a quarter and he would put it down on the ground as a mark for a place for the person coming to be interviewed to stand at the quarter. And that way they would be in the perfect spot for the lighting, all the TV concerns that we have to have. Colin Jensen, my camera as well. And I remember Nick Ehlers came up and he looked down and he was like, oh, a quarter. And he went and he picked it up and everyone was like, no, that's your mark. That's where you're supposed to stand. And everyone kind of laughed about it. And I remember thinking, like, these are teenagers. This is an 18-year-old who go and stand in front of a group full of strangers that they don't know, and all of a sudden everyone's laughing. And some guys, this, Ken, some guys are super shy and they don't know how to handle that well, but the really kind of confident guys like Nick Ehlers in that moment just kind of chuckled, was like, oh, well, I'm keeping this anyways, he said, made a little bit of a joke out of it and turned it into like this connecting scenario where and you knew at that moment, this guy's got moxie. Any questions of whether this small, slight guy thinks that he's going to be able to make the NHL, they're out the door. He walked in here. He knows how to handle himself. So my interaction with Colby Barlow is essentially that. Like the first thing I asked him, I'd said, I'd made a joke basically about his beard and him looking well beyond his age. And maybe that's how he earned the captaincy as the youngest captain ever of the Owen Sound attack, because, the beard helped him fake his way into the job. Handles that stuff like a pro, gives really good answers. Of course, he's the Scholastic Player of the Year. He's smart. He thinks on his feet. I think another one of the things I asked him, being that the Jets love to get those Scholastic players, right? You've got Adam Lowry, you've got Josh Morrissey, you've got Cole Perfetti. And I think I made some kind of crack to him about, being the Scholastic Player of the Year. I imagine him going onto the plane and all those players getting together and talking quantum physics and playing chess and doing all these certain kind of things, right? And he had a real laugh about that. And he came afterwards and he's like, I don't really know my quantum mechanics, maybe I'm going to have to worry about that. But this is a guy who's extremely comfortable in this moment right now, because this is a guy who's been running a room full of men already. Guys 3 years older than him, like Jay Buchla was talking about, dealing with the trainers, other men who are in that room, trying to make a team tick, trying to make them go, dealing with his general manager at that level, his coaches at that level. And what I see from that is, the way that I love how Jay said that, because he said this is a guy who's going to walk and make younger players, that they said, Jay Buchla said the effect that he's going to have on Brad Lambert and Rutger McGroarty. These are guys older than him, and he's saying this guy is going to walk in and be a positive force on those guys. Well, you could see that. When he said that, that made total sense to me, because here's a guy I can have a conversation with. The lights go on, national television. Everybody's looking at you. He handled himself phenomenally. He had a good time doing it. He had a chuckle when, we kibitzed back and forth. This is a guy who I could not have imagined handling that moment better than he did. Everything that Jay says and talked about his character, you could see shining through in just a quick little interview with me. I was blown away.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, in sharing with my conversation with Dale DeGray, he was very honest. He said he actually was one of the people who didn't want to heap any additional pressure on Colby Barlow in his draft year, but he got convinced by the coaching staff after talking to, his agent and a bunch of other people in the process, that this is a guy who, even though he was young, he's mature beyond his years and he could handle it. So that's why they did give him the C, and he said he just leads by example. I posted my story in the chat room, and this was just incredible what he said to me here. He's dedicated and he's humble. He leads by example, pushes his teammates to want to win every game. There's more to Colby Barlow once you start to peel back the onion than just a shooter. I mean, I love that quote, because everyone too, let's not kid ourselves, Sean. We had Jason Buchla on because he's actually watched him live. Same with Sam Cosentino. Yeah. You and I haven't watched him. We haven't watched any tape on him. So naturally there's tons of fans who haven't watched him either, but they go to his Hockey DB page and see, holy smokes, he went from 30 goals to 46, and he ends up being high-end performer here, over a point a game player, 79 points in 59 games. But we don't know how did he get those points? I mean, he's not just a guy who has a heavy shot. He's a guy who, is not afraid to get into traffic, is what Dale DeGray said. He goes to the net hard, tips, he can deke. He's got all kinds of talent, and just a real passion to want to get better. And I think that the personality is really important. And, I don't think it is an accident. We know that they're turning over part of the core here during this off season. The start of that has been underway. The Jets want to have guys that want to be in the organization long term, and I think Colby Barlow is a guy that can fit when it comes to that. And I'm very impressed by him, and it'll be interesting to see him when he gets to Winnipeg here next week for development camp. I mean, we're not going to watch him at development camp to say, oh, hey, this is what Colby Barlow is, because let's be honest, most of these guys have been off the ice for a while. But it's good to get a baseline and to talk to them in a more casual setting, because Sean, you're there, and I've been to those drafts so often. In that 5 minutes after you've been drafted, a lot of the time the players don't even remember what they say, right? I mean, A lot of it's cliche, a lot of it's, you're just trying to kind of, all the bright lights and everything else. I love the fact that Barlow himself said he figured out as a rookie, he said, if you can't be trusted in your own end, you're not going to see the ice. And let's not kid ourselves. When you are an offensive talent, that is a very impressive and important lesson to learn. And the fact that he is learning it early on, I think, is super important. And another guy that we should talk about too, I mean, he'll help Brad Lambert. He'll also help Chaz Lucius. I mean, that's someone I should have mentioned too. A guy who's played center, a guy who's played wing. So they got a bunch of guys. But when you have a guy who's big and strong like that, and man, I just thinking of it too, after speaking with Gabe Velarde on the Zoom call earlier today, thinking about the kind of power forward in Barlow playing with a guy who's in a big body like Velarde, 6'3", 215. I mean, and then maybe you have a guy like Lambert or Lucius or Ehlers or Connor on the other wing. I mean, these are going to be some pretty talented players coming through the system here. And then, Perfetti's going to fit in there as well, and see where Kupari fits. But yeah, it's interesting to see the dynamic is definitely changing. And Sean, you talked about that with Kevin Cheveldayoff earlier today. What did you think of, I know you mentioned the theory when we were talking on the show yesterday. What did you think of his answer to your question about if it's a conscious decision in terms of the style of player they've been pursuing right now?
Well, I felt like he confirmed it, right? Like I didn't think he outright came out and said that, but I think that his answer was basically that, right? Like they're heading in a little bit of a different direction, and they are trying to get into a more depth thing. And I will say this, I want to tie this into it because I think we should have this conversation.
Yep.
Jay Bukala wasn't like as willing to go down the road, or either maybe didn't necessarily see it that way, but I do think that there's a difference in the philosophy here. For the Jets and how they draft. Like, I get it. It's always going to be best player, right? But I do think that the Jets prioritizing has gone from being like, I think last year what they did is they took Rutger McGroarty first because that's what their priority was. And then they went later on to Brad Lambert and got a player that was kind of more like what they've often drafted in the past. Because I take a look at Brad Lambert, I see him as being a more Nikolai Ehlers type, a Jack Rosvick type, a Kyle Connor type, right? So I do think the fact that they took Rutger McGroarty first kind of signaled the idea that the Jets are trying now to not necessarily prioritize the most ridiculously skilled player in the draft that's available, which I think they did quite well over the years, but that they've kind of shifted to the idea of we want skill, but we also want this certain element that's involved with this skill. I think Rutger McGroarty was that, and I think this Colby Barlow pick is exactly that as well. So I do think what the Winnipeg Jets have been for a lot of years, they're evolving. They're changing and they're going in a different direction. I think it's not out of being forced. I think the Jets have decided, just like in 2015, Ken, after they made the playoffs, and they basically said, "Yay, we made the playoffs, and we looked like a really good team. We were top 10 at one point in that year before we dropped, and then ended up getting swept in the first round." But the Jets made it there, and all the fans were thinking, "Okay, after all of these years of pain, we finally made the playoffs. Now we can continue going." And the Jets said, "No, we're going to tear down in a different vision and rebuild up to this really, really high-end, high-skilled team." I think what we're seeing right now is them going with the idea that we're prioritizing depth, we're prioritizing character, we're prioritizing defensive acumen, we're prioritizing hard, rough players. Like that. What I loved about what Jay Bukala said about that first three steps for Colby Barlow, the idea of that first three steps gets him into position, and then once he's in that position, he's too strong to give up the advantage that he's created in that position. That's another way of saying this guy's really hard to play against because he gets a step on you, and once he gets a step on you, you can't get it back because he's too strong to get it back from you. I hear Rutger McGroarty and his speed coming up, getting into that direction. You see the Winnipeg Jets, especially when you add some of the players that they just added. I think Iafallo falls into this as well. The Jets are going to be a harder team to play against. I think you see that philosophy that they prioritize at the trade deadline this year when they get Niederreiter and Vladislav Nemesnikov. You're starting to see there's a specific kind of player that every time the Jets add now, they're looking like that. They're looking a little bit less like Nikolai Ehlers, Kyle Connor, Jack Rosvick, and looking a little bit more like these harder-edged players. And I think what it's going to mean is a return to those days of, teams coming into Winnipeg and being like, "Oh God, we got to play in Winnipeg again. It's cold. We get off the plane. It's cold. My bones hurt." Then we head in front of a crowd that's going absolutely nuts because they've got this team full of guys who just absolutely beat the heck out of the opposition, which Winnipeg fans love and loved in the days of Dustin Byfuglien and some of the bigger defensemen that they had back in those days. I see a full philosophical shift, and I see it in Chevy's trades. I see it in his drafting. I see it in his trade deadline acquisitions. The Jets are heading in a different direction. And to bring this around to me asking that question of Kevin Cheveldayoff, I feel like I heard him say exactly that.
Yeah, and one of the comments from DeGray about Colby Barlow, he can score in every way. He finds a way to get to open ice, and he knows that all he needs is for his stick to have an open lane, and it's a scoring chance. He gets a stick in a lane, the puck is there, and boom, it's in the net. Simple. That's what he does. He's got a tremendous, tremendous shot. Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you totally. The bigger bodies and like the ability to go to hard traffic areas. Kapari is a guy who is incredibly fast, plays a physical game, a little bit of an agitator. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, I mean, what else? What else? I mean, obviously, we should talk quickly about Blake Wheeler. You were in the conversation. But what he said about the buyout being an option, and also too, what were your quick thoughts on what Cheveldayoff said about Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck when he was asked about him?
Well, I think what he's okay. So let's start with Wheeler. I think Wheeler is an absolute admission that we can expect this to happen. I think he's going to try to broker some kind of deal. I think in his language, he's saying that he wants to work with Blake Wheeler to send him out the door on his terms if it's possible to do so. But I mean, when is the last time Kevin Cheveldayoff actually acknowledged something like this? Like today, Kevin Cheveldayoff acknowledged it's an option to buy out Blake Wheeler, right? I did not think that day would ever come, which tells me that, I mean, this is it. The Blake Wheeler era in Winnipeg is over. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to be able to broker some kind of deal before it comes to a buyout. That's what I take away from that. The other part of it, I think, was a clear and direct message to the other general managers out there that you are not giving me what I want and what I expect at this moment for either Mark Scheifele or Connor Hellebuck. And guess what? If you want to test my resolve, well, take a look at what we just did with Pierre-Luc Dubois. I will wait. You can have me by the throat with my back against the wall, and I am not moving until I get what I want. Now, we have never seen this get to a situation where he basically lost everything. Like the huge loss for this is if they decided to go with Connor Hellebuck again this season and Mark Scheifele, and then those players played the entire year and then left in unrestricted free agency, and you lose those guys for nothing. Because you take a look at what they did with Pierre-Luc Dubois, they got some assets. You can start seeing the future here. They're back to, I think, drafting. Not that they ever left it, but I think they're starting to refill the cupboards in a very exciting way, and you can see where the team is going in that direction. So they can't lose those guys for nothing. But I can tell you this right now, anyone who thinks that Kevin Cheveldayoff is just going to sit back and take whatever he can get for those guys, to me, this was just his verbal acknowledgement to the rest of the league. That's not happening. These guys are going to go out the door very similar to what Pierre-Luc Dubois looked like. And again, Jay talked about it. Chevy did a really good job having his back against the wall and getting what he got. I don't take a look at what Chevy did in that situation. I still say this from the beginning. This all starts with Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic going out the door. I don't look at this trade and say, in the end, the Jets made themselves a way better team by getting, Iafallo and Velarde and the guys that they got. I don't think that happened in this case, but I do think he made the best of the situation as he got into it, which means you can expect going forward, he is going to make the best of the situation he can with Connor Hellebuck and with Mark Scheifele. And he basically just said through the media, which he's probably been saying on the phone, it's not going to cut it, guys. If you want to get serious and you want these players, let's make a deal. You're not playing my game right now. We're going to play this game on my terms.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I'll be very curious once Saturday rolls around if the Jets can or will make an offer to someone like Joonas Korpisalo. I think this is a guy that they would be interested in to be the 1A and a one, in a job share scenario. I think they'd be willing to make him a good offer to be a goalie here. Now, if the Jets would be able to sign him in free agency, then all of a sudden now they're dealing from a position of strength. And that's a huge difference here for a team that isn't probably going to bring, they're not going to bring David Riddick back to be the backup. They need an upgrade at that position to begin with. So, yeah, I don't see Blake Wheeler being in Florida. That's not going to be happening, in my opinion.
No.
But in terms of the Jets, I think they're going to, sign a goaltender. I think they could get one in a trade. I know there's been lots of talk about Boston. Maybe Mark Scheifele is a guy who may be of interest to them at some point if they're interested in, moving out Linus Ullmark. Or even Jeremy Swayman, who's going to get a raise, and then maybe they just go with a different 1B there. But I think it's going to be very interesting coming up here in the next little while. What do you think about goal? Do you think they're going to be aggressive when it comes to the goalie market and then see what happens with Hellebuck, or how do you see? I mean, we got lots of time to talk about it, I guess. But
that's a tricky one. I should be out here in 5 minutes because I already got
buddy,
the
no problem,
the
no
look.
problem.
But no, like let's kind of dive into it. This is a tricky one because this is a real like chicken before the egg, cart before the horse kind of situation here. Like I don't really, because if you do go out and I mean, whatever leverage that you have right now in the Connor Hellebuck situation, if you do go, let's say, and get Jonas Korpisalo, then you really put yourself in a situation, right? Because now you need to move that guy, and everything that he just said at the podium about Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck are Winnipeg Jets. That kind of goes out the window. That obviously goes out the window if you do that. I do wonder for one quick second if there's an idea that Kevin Cheveldayoff is thinking maybe those guys will take a look at what we're doing here, see the new philosophy, and maybe like it, and maybe there's a conversation to be had if we do take them into the season, because it's dangerous to take them into the season if you're not going to re-sign them. So maybe part of this is him just playing the game that I don't expect to re-sign these guys. They've said that they don't want to stay, but maybe, just maybe, if I do have to keep them in the fold this year because we don't get what we want, and I'm looking to trade them at the trade deadline, maybe, just maybe, we can have conversations with these guys since they're still here, and maybe they like the direction things are going, and I could pull off a last minute heist or something like that. You got to keep all options open. I think Kevin Cheveldayoff's doing a good job of doing that.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that the talk in the chat is going to pick up around Mark Scheifele right away here. I think Dubois was, kind of occupying the majority of the Jets' time here, aside from the draft itself over the last few days. And now that the Dubois deal is complete, I think that Scheifele is going to generate some interest. I think this is what we've been talking about in various times, Sean. I think that because teams were so interested, not a lot of teams, we know it, because there were absolutely zero trades today of draft picks. Teams didn't want to get out of the first round, which is why I think that there wasn't as much chatter. Now it would be probably future draft picks when it comes to maybe first rounders in a deal for Hellebuck or Scheifele. But I mean, it's going to depend on what happens and how teams view their scenarios coming up here, because we know there's not going to be as much action on the free agency market, especially with my guy Ivan Barbashev being taken off the board by the Vegas Golden Knights today.
Oh yeah, how big was that?
Re-upping on that 5x5. That's just an absolutely spectacular deal by the Vegas Golden Knights. And just a quick one here, Gabe Vilardi I thought was fantastic on the Zoom call today. Interesting. He definitely said he's a guy who wants to be here. It showed some sense of humor when talking about last year when he got his offer put on his table. There was no negotiating. It was just take it and say thank you. This year, coming off a 23-goal, 41-point season, he will now have an opportunity to have a little more leverage and bargaining power in this scenario here. So that was interesting from Vilardi. Yeah, it's just we got a couple interesting days behind us and a few more interesting days ahead. And awesome job by you so far. And we'll look forward to keeping this going tomorrow here. And then we'll just see where your travel goes. I think we're going to try to, if there's news tomorrow, we're going to be all over it.
Thank you, Kenny. I will have to say, I think my boss is happy after I sent her a picture from the emergency room Saturday morning at 4 a.m. with what my face looked like. I think she's just happy. She just repeatedly kept saying, I think we're pulling this off on camera every time. So that's been good. It's been good to pull that off. Ken, I'm glad you were. Ken has been the guy who's really been holding things down and making sure everything comes together with Kenny and Renny while I've been down here, and he's still been doing it while taking care of his duties at home and making sure that he's getting his great pieces out, which you should go read right now. So thanks to you for that, Ken. I want to say, and end this show like I always do. If you appreciate the conversations that we're having in these spaces, please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep these conversations going in these spaces for us. That's the Keg, Pristine Roofing, our summertime friends, the Johnston Group, Vittorio Rossi, Lou Ferlin, TransCanada Brewing Company, and Home Field. And last but not least, probably first in my books is, of course, the Johnston Group. But last but not least is our fans and our viewers and listeners who jump in here. we were blown away with our numbers in the last show. We were blown away that, as many of you are in here right now,
Awesome.
this late at night, just for the draft. We so much appreciate your time, your attention, and your contributions to the show. Thank you so much for that. We can't wait to do it again with you. We're going to do it after the draft tomorrow, Kenny?
As long as you have time, we're definitely going to do a show tomorrow.
Let's figure it out. We'll wrap this up so we can wrap the entire weekend and then talk about, the stuff going forward that the Jets are facing before we dive into free agency later, where you will see Ken and I up on the up on your television screen covering July 1st. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for showing up. Click the like button, subscribe if you haven't. Other than that, we will see everybody after the rest of the draft starting tomorrow.
The Kenny and Renny Show is brought to you by Homefield, Cambrian Credit Union, Lou Ferlin, Trans-Canada Brewing, Vittorio Rossi, and Johnston Group.